Hello and welcome back to another episode of Make Astrology Fun Again. The energy is a little different today. I'm a little calmer. Not that I'm not calm. Anyway, you get the point. Welcome to my channel. My name is Jose. Um, I do a bunch of things. I do astrology, specifically what I like to coin micro astrology, which is basically working with asteroids, um, and other minor planets and centaurs and dwarf planets. But I don't know. It's more the asteroids. So um, I do that, and I go into so much detail. Like I have this book that's about over 749 pages now, single spaced. Yes, I'm kind of showing off because I'm proud of it. I do my research on it. Every asteroid is so detailed. Like literally, I've done a lot of research on it, and I still update a lot of them. Like right now, I thought I finished with Varuna. And I'm like, oh no, I want to update that. There's something about it that I was missing. I was like, that's interesting. Um, and then there's just other stuff too. So, but I also do music. I'm an instrumental player. I am. It's a past life thing. I'm pretty much drawn to music. I play music, perform. Well, not really perform anymore, not as much. But yeah, just music, instrumental music, meditative, all that stuff. It's on my YouTube channel here. And I also love languages. You can see I have flags. That's what the flags are for. It's my way of just, yeah, I like to showcase it. It's just, I love languages, but I don't study languages. I don't learn languages. I just acquire them the way babies, toddlers, and young children do, before we start developing ego. Okay. And that's kind of where I want to go into. Um, so today we want to talk about learning style. Now, many people probably have heard learning style. When they hear learning style, it's like, what is that? Is that like like auditory, tactile, all that stuff? There is a researcher, Howard Gardner, who I kind of learned from, not from research, but through when I was doing my educational, well, sorry, when I was doing my degree in education, becoming a teacher, specifically a language teacher. And I was, what was this? Yeah, so there's a lot of theories that were passed on. One of them is by Howard Gardner's, his theory on multiple intelligences. So there's mathematical logic, music auditory, spatial, mm, interpersonal, intrapersonal, kinesthetic, tactile, kinesthetic, um, existential, which is a weird one. And then there's the natural one, natural learning style, which is a strong one for me, which is like really gets not only hands-on, but like really feels organic, like really does it feel kind of natural. So I've never understood most systems, how they like to place things kind of this way, categorize things. No, I like to go with the flow, just like nature does. Slow, take your time, have fun with it, kind of those kind of things. I'll show you exactly what it is, how it's in the chart, but I really want to specify on our learning style, the one we develop when we start to develop ego versus the one that we actually naturally have, which is the cosmic style, which is not really a style. It's just we really acquire it. We all have this ability to acquire language, specifically language. Okay. Um, I'll show you. I explain to you why I'm having this flag of the Union Jack. I might get in trouble for this. Mm, um, it's because I wanted to talk about the path of English, which is going to be in another video, which I'm going to do right after this one. So, so here we go. So when we talk about our learning style. You can find it in what you call the cusp or the third house. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, I'll show you my birth chart. And I change it all the time because it's specifically like where I'm looking at. So you have here the third house, right? You can see that. Okay. Um, this might help a little bit. This is the cusp of the third house. Okay. Cusp of the third house is in Virgo, right here. Okay. So you don't, so Virgo influences the third house, but also Libra does. But it's usually through the planets that you look at. You can generalize on what that feels like if you have, like, let's say no one, let's say there's nothing here. There's none of this stuff right here, right? Then you go into the cusp first. Then you look at the ruling planet or planets of that sign. Um, Technically, there wasn't. I didn't have to do that. Jupiter is at the cusp. It's actually here. You see this? It's about 20, what is this? 23 degrees, roughly 23 degrees. And it's actually conjunct many of the planets. You have Hecate and Orpheus conjunct it. Conjunct means, for those who don't know, is like right beside each other. Okay. And just to remind you that when we're talking about aspects, this is their location. This is the degrees difference, the degree where aspects are the connection of the planets. Okay. But also to cusps as well. You can say cusps as well, specifically like the angles. Okay. So the ascendant. Okay. This one right here, the nadir or IC, and then you have here the DC, and then you have the MC or midheaven. DC, by the way, is descendant. Okay, that's why you have the rock band AC/DC. But anyways, I don't listen to them. I don't know. Anyways, the point is, usually people find conjunctions to this or aspects to the angles more powerful. But it doesn't mean that you don't have aspects to the cusps. Personally, at least for me, I believe that the cusps need, there's always something there. Cusps are important. It's just bigger with the angles because there are major points in our lives. Okay. Um, so anyways, there's planets conjunct. Okay. So 20 by 1 degree Hecate. Okay. And then 1 degree Orpheus. Well, about 0 degrees. So 0 degree orb difference. 1 degree orb of Hecate to the third house cusp. Orpheus is about 0 degrees, give or take a few minutes. We always count minutes in astrology. So 58 minutes. Anyways, that's not important. So we have all those things. So typically what we do is we look at the cusp of itself and you look at the sign and then you simplify there by going like, okay, what is this about? So I do like natural learning. That's the earth sign in Virgo, but I also like it to be very technical. I like it to be kind of like organized, approached, all that stuff. There's a sort of a path to it, which is actually kind of like this is actually tied to Hecate. Um, you probably see here there's a bunch of stuff here because I have Venus here that's all the way conjuncting all the way to that. And what's happening here is that Venus is actually at 17 degrees. This is 23. So that's about 7, 8, 9, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So it's less than 5 degrees. So Venus doesn't really influence the third house here directly. However, because of the other bodies, Mbaba Mwana Sawaresa, Mbaba Mana, this is very long name. It's Zulu, based on Zulu mythology. She's the goddess of beer and fertility. Let me double check her. Mbaba. Okay. So she's not an asteroid. She is dwarf planet, way up there. Okay, she's about balance between boundary and bounty. So she is about fertility. She's about essence of things, mindfulness. Okay. So how this ties into the third house, it's conjunct Haumea and my Venus and also Themis there and a bunch of other planets. Um, which is about connection. But the thing is, here's the thing about what I discovered with Maba. And I realized this was I doing when I was doing the mythology and then doing the whole breakdown of my thing with my chart, with my research and my cheat sheets. Um, well, it is cheat sheets, but is that she's about meticulousness. Now, had I not had Mbaba there, I would have had that through Virgo itself. But what about the other things? She's about detail orientedness, precision, okay, long haul durability, which is the earth in there. Okay, that's kind of that can be found through Virgo. Okay, strength, creativity, stewardship, earthly duties. Okay, so see, health is wealth. So that's a Virgo thing, but earthly duties, okay, that's fine. A little bit like the earth thing. Natural and present attention to gifts. Okay, influence, power, impact, importance, weightiness, emphasis, letting your guard down. That's a bit of the Virgo feel to that, which is a mutable sign, so very flexible. Past, present, future, which now ties in with Hecate. So I like that order. There has to be some sort of like order. All forms of elements or elementals, that's also rhythm. You see that? There has to be order to that. Circadian rhythm. So that's also that order thing, which technically can be through Virgo as well, but not that detailed. Um, so when it comes to learning, I like to work with, yeah, with nature. I like to make sure it's not only natural, but also really, really, really natural. Let's see what else here. So I'm not talking about really about Baba here. And Haumea is about regeneration. Um, she's also a dwarf planet. She's way up there. She's about fertility as well. So revival, regeneration. So there's something about a bit about the mutable sign. If you look at Virgo, she starts over again because it's mutable. It's bound to end. That's a mutable sign. Um, I guess energy of this archetype, yes, that it can end and then start again. Technically, yes. However, not many people would do that. So where I have Haumea here, it shows that process. Okay. It shows the death and rebirth. She's kind of like Pluto. Okay. She's about the egg. She's about seed of life, youth and maturity. She's about anti-aging, youthfulness. So kind of like usually when I learn, yes, I kind of like new things. I enjoy new things. I kind of start over. But to find out through Virgo is not really, I don't think so. It's not that detailed. Specifically, also, there's things that you wouldn't recognize if you were to just focus on the sign. Because what would happen is that you wouldn't, let's say, specific details, like, for example, Themis, right? If you look at Themis, it's about visions, okay? Nursing and caring, guidance, empathy. I do like that. But is that really part of my learning style? Kind of. I don't think Virgo is really about empathy itself, but it can be. But again, that's kind of like, you know, needle in a haystack kind of thing, right? And shooting at the, what is that, shooting at the wind or something, whatever the idiom is, right? So, and she's all about prophecies. So how is that tied to Virgo? Well, technically, if we can, what we can do is tie it to the square to Neptune. That's visions, but it's a square. But isn't that like a challenge? Isn't that kind of like a challenging aspect? For those who don't know, square aspects are challenging aspects. They tend to be what we call the hard. It's a hard aspect, but it's also kind of like, right? It's a lot of lessons that we learn through hard aspects. So Themis is like that. Okay. Um, so Themis is about omens, guidance, signs, future telling, foresight. So it's not really a Virgo thing. If you isolate the third house thing, second house to the third house, which is like self-worth, which is where Venus is there, and also belongs in the second house. So it's right at home in that house. But Venus in Virgo, often right here, Venus in Virgo is meticulous. Virgo's just like pedantic. Okay. I used to be really, really, really pedantic. And so I had all these imaginative delusions that fun things should be a certain way. I got pedantic and also dogmatic with my how I like to do things. Still kind of a little bit today, but I'm trying to learn to let that go. So, and that's where we go into the progression charts. But that's not for this time. Okay. Um, so there's that, right? So it's not really tied to Virgo. So I find that the asteroids help with this one. Then we also have Atropos here, which is technically, I'm just going to go more general with this one, okay? Atropos is one of the fates, okay? So she's about transitions, endings. So that's kind of the fate thing. Um, Inflexibility, adamant behavior. Yeah, so quite, it kind of was, I was kind of very adamant about that. She's about things that end, whether I choose. So sometimes I choose certain things and I'm like, oh, I give up on this. I don't want to learn this anymore. That's exactly what it was. Okay, Hecate is like the timelessness thing. She's about control or not control. She's basically about um evolution. She is multi-talented, which actually explains what my learning style is. I'm kind of everywhere. But it's not really jack of all trades per se. It's just I like to touch on many things, which is also a Virgo thing. Um, but Virgo also likes to focus. So there's a slight difference between Virgo and Gemini. Because they're ruled by Mercury, people think, oh, it's all about learning and all that stuff. Well, Virgo is a bit more about perfection. So there's a bit more focus on things. So it's not that Virgo will move on to the next thing right away. It'll stay with one thing, but it'll stick with it. Gemini tends to be everywhere. It's almost like Aries, where it's like never finishing it. Gemini, though, how it can, because of the attention to detail. But because of Virgo's earth element, there's a bit more focus there. Actually, a lot more focus there. Um, yeah, so again, multi-talented, right? So ambivalence tied to that, timelessness. So, but it's also tied to the witchcraft stuff. So it's tied to the magic. So I like things that are magical, which actually kind of ties in again with Neptune. So there's things that you can so-called speculate through the signs and go deep into it, but you'd have to kind of pull hard at it when you're looking only at the sign at the cusp of the third house, what sign it's in. Even if you didn't have a planetary, you would have to still kind of like speculate. But once you have the asteroids, I tell you this right now, the asteroids really give a lot of detail that you don't have to look elsewhere, right? Orpheus is that whole passionate thing. Orpheus is about being convincing. So my learning style is often tied also to interpersonal. I like learning through connection with people, group work. Okay, multiple intelligence is one of those theories. It's one of my strengths as well. So interpersonal. But there's also interpersonal at times. So inter is with people. Intra is that whole thing where it's like I kind of learn on my own. So we all have the learning styles. We all have it when we develop the ego. Okay. We all have the learning styles. Just there's like about approximately three that are dominant. That's what they say. The point is, it still applies here to astrology. So my learning style is this, but there's more through astrology. I find that when it comes to all these Myers-Briggs multiple intelligences, even no offense to what is that one? Human design. I feel it's a little bit too general. It's kind of like saying, people say, this is your sign, this is your sign. But what do you mean this is your sign? There's signs everywhere in the chart. You can be more than one thing. Is exactly why we say that now. You can be more than one thing. Why? Because there's always an aspect of you that's there. Even if you say your star sign or your sun sign is, let's say, in Virgo, it's still going to be a bunch of different things. It's just the sun is what you identify with most. Again, that's the part of the ego wanting to identify with that. Yeah, you've got to be careful about those things when you're doing things like that. We don't want to get stuck in the star sign, let alone the triad, the ascendant, sun, and moon. We don't want to stick with that. We don't want to just get stuck on it. We have to look at the whole chart, look at everything. Okay. So, before even going into the Mercury, which rules Virgo, we also have Chiron that rules Virgo. We also have to look at the earth element, the quality of it, which is it's a mutable sign. polarity, which is which you call a negative sign, meaning it's like introspective or rather introverted. Okay. Um, and then we look at the, what do you call that? If you're looking at the planet specifically within the third house or even the second house, in this case, for me, that's what it is. Then you look at um, the ruling sign of that house. So this Gemini. So you look at Gemini as well. But in this case, it still applies. It's still Mercury. But there's also Virgo. So there's that health aspect to it. There's the nature stuff as well. There's medicine as well. When I say medicine, I don't really mean medicine. Kind of, yeah, herbs. So I like to learn about natural things. Um, I kind of have been kind of, what do you call this? Neglecting it a little bit. I don't really do herbal medicine. I have been called to focus more on it. So I've been kind of putting it off, but I just always like being nature, connected to nature. There's something about it just like, oh, revitalizes me. Not only that, but just makes me feel good. And it's just it calms my sense of self-worth, which is where Venus here is, right? Because it's also the second house. Second house is tied to self-worth, which is Venus. That's what they have in common. So the point I'm making here is that there's so many elements to look at. You have to look at the whole thing. Now, considering this is the learning style, why is this the learning style? Like, as in what we call learning style. Technically, this is a learning style that we actually learn about, meaning it's part of our path. Yes, we chose to be here, but that's when we started to have the ego, meaning, attachment or identification to this reality, started to attach ourselves as if this reality is the only reality. That's when we have these learning styles. We learn it through elementary school. Elementary school is when we start to like pick things up like this and like this is all that stuff. Um, I never really understood the systems. I never understood. It's like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And I always kind of just went along with my thing, and I kind of got in trouble for those things. I always thought like I was kind of talkative. Um, I was kind of like I always connected with people, so that's how I always learned. That's part of my learning process. That's part of Orpheus, right? But I also kind of was punished for it. I was kind of separated from groups, and I was just like, I remember, I don't know, I just didn't feel good in the classroom. I didn't like it. I like to be more, yes, myself. So I'm also what is that? Not just introverted, but it was like intrapersonal. I have that as well, right? So let's take a look at Tezcatlipoca here. Tezcatlipoca. It sounds like that song by Tezcatlipoca. Okay, never mind. I would think it was by the Beach Boys or something. Anyways, oh, 1 second. Okay. So he's about complacency and change. So duality, shadow, falsehood, pretense. Yeah. I've always had to do that when I was young, learning. I had to kind of, but then there was also rage within that because I was kind of like, I don't like this, so I didn't like it. Hostility, yeah, I was temptations, yeah, that makes sense. So, but you also have Jupiter here. And Jupiter always expands on that. Jupiter is actually here in a what is that called? It's in a fall. It's in its fall. When I say it's fall, it means it's not as strong because it's in Virgo. Because its opposite sign, Pisces, right here, is Jupiter feels at home in Pisces. It's actually rules. It's at its home. It's in its what you call its dignity in Sagittarius. Pisces is its secondary, or it fits in secondarily. Um, so therefore, when you have the opposite sign of that, that means it's in its fall. So it's in its rise. It rises through. This is why I don't use the word rising with ascendant. I just call it ascendant. So it rises, or it's in an exaltation in. Um, I believe it's in exaltation. No, it's also in its dignity in Pisces. So it's in its detriment, not fall. This is detriment. It's called detriment in that's an astrology term. it's in its detriment in Virgo. So that means it doesn't expand as much because it's very technical, right? Virgo is very like analytical, perfectionist, pedantic, meticulous. So it kind of breaks down the expansiveness of Jupiter. It doesn't flow, it doesn't go like this. It goes like, so it's kind of a grounded thing, but at the same time, so it doesn't flow as much. But there is still growth. It's just slow. Quietly ambitious is what I remember Judy Hall saying. Jupiter in Virgo is quietly ambitious. It stuck with me because I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm not that overt about it. So with Tezcatlipoca there, yeah, I remember doing those things. I had to also go through a bit of death and rebirth with that whole thing, find my sovereignty, finding kind of like what works for me. Okay. Um, it's funny how they said Northern Hemisphere here. Yeah, I did a lot of my elementary school here in North America. So perfectly makes sense, right? Not only because I live in Canada, but it's that's what it is. Um, what else is there? Anyways, the point is, oh, there's prophecies here too. So it's part of what I learned. I knew what would happen as well. I had this sort of visionary thing. Themis is also tied to that. There's also Almea tied to that as well. Hecate, I believe. Atropos, yes, slightly. I believe so. But that it all ties in. It all ties in together. Okay. So because of Neptune here, square to Neptune, 20 degrees, right? All of these, right? Once you go into Jupiter itself, technically it's not really square. It's not really square. Um, Neptune anymore because it's 20 degrees. It's too far off. 8-degree orb, that's a little too far off. It can be. It is actually right here. You see that? It's 20 degrees. So they still counted it. But once it goes into Tezcatlipoca all the way to Juno here, those do not belong. Those do not square Neptune. So that changes the definition as well. Okay, so I'm looking off to the side here. Um, so there's a little bunch of other things too. Atira is the one that's all about nature as well. Bennu is all about, he was the Egyptian god, like looks like a bird. He was like the phoenix. Pele is about the anger thing. So it's all tied together. Juno is loyalty here, but also marriage, by the way. That's another story. That's for another time, rather. So all this stuff that I've experienced here, these are my learning styles. It's all comes down to it. So it's more specific than what I get from the multiple intelligence theory by Howard Gardner. So again, going back to what I was saying earlier, this is my learning style. We've gone past my thing, but that's fine. It's okay. It will help you guys. So before we were born, so usually pre-ascendant, so before that, we don't really see it in the charts. I don't think it would matter, to be honest with you. I think when it comes to, I had this video earlier when we were talking about wounding from the in the womb, because it's 12th house, that's where we were still in the womb. And as a fetus, we carry energies from my parents, our mother specifically. Um, for me, it was the mother because I do have cancer here. So that's that. However, I would say I also picked up some of the learning styles, but it's more like propensities. I have um Kernunos and series here. So I always liked learning, natural learning for me, which was when I was a baby. I felt like this, I don't know, I felt like this, I still remember kind of this feeling. Instinctively, I'm just channeling it instinctively. But I remember like being with my parents. But then at the same time, I wasn't. So when I wasn't with them, so it's kind of in a way, how do you call this? It kind of something happened with the process, right? But what I'm trying to say here is that when it comes to learning styles, we don't have a really style before we are born. Can be, but I don't see it being tied in, not at least not right now, because I haven't done the research on it yet. Um, I don't see it yet, but it could be there. I'm not denying the possibility. at least astrologically speaking. But what I can see, I know that when it comes to pre-birth learning style, it's that we all acquire. It's not learning, it's actually acquisition. Okay. So which brings me to my next point, which is this is why I love, what's referred to as language acquisition or storytelling. It's not really those things only, it's everything. Life itself is a learning style, so-called, right? Life itself is meant to be acquired. Life itself is meant to be absorbed and learn from the ups and downs, the positive, negative. That's part of what we're here to learn. This is what real learning is. It's experiential. For me, what you can do if this is your ascendant, you can sort of look at it as if like there's this area before the ascendant. It's not just how you mask yourself, but rather what else is probably saying there is the, I guess again, propensity, this tendency to be more connected emotionally. This is Cancer through family. But you can say that, but it's not ego. It's not coming from that. It's just like a basic need, which is funny because the moon rules Cancer here, which is the moon is about basic needs. Ironically, that's kind of what she is too. But at the same time, it's also, I would say it can be. I would say test it out and see what it's like. Look at the sign first and get a feel for the sign holistically, like, and also what the details are of that sign. Um, right. It can be shrewd, right? But that's all identity with the ego. If you look at the flow of itself, I don't think it's through the sign itself. It's through the actual thing of our source energy. That's our divinity, which is always to just learn without any conditions. So it's unconditional. So there is not going to be any sign there. So I feel like there's that when it's almost like there will be no signs in the chart. It'll just be like a real like a flat wheel. There's no zodiac signs. There's no aspects. Maybe the houses are there. I don't know. If I'm talking about how you can process it, imagine that there are no signs because that means that you haven't developed ego yet. Now, what can probably be another way of doing things is that you can look at the south node. Let's say the south node. But that's again carrying in once you develop the ego in this life, you start to attach it to identity from past lives. So you carry that over. Mm. But I don't, when you're a baby, I don't know. This is where we have that question of like the chicken and the egg kind of thing. Like, tabula rasa, are you born empty or are you born with skills? I think it's both. There's more of an innocent approach to the carried abilities from past lives or anything in the womb, but there's no judgment. There might be more of a physical experience or physical remembering or remembrance of that experience or physical memory of that experience, but there's no attachment to that yet. Because again, when we're in the womb or before we start to, before we reach the age of 7 approximately, around that time, at the age of 0, there's nothing. We're really present. So there's really no attachment to it. So it's both. This is why I say it's both, because that's part of the journey of, unless of course the baby dies at the age of 0 or 1 and they don't develop an ego. So that's what it is. It's so simple as that. So what I'm saying is my point in this whole video is learning styles, what you learn and how you can find that in the charts, and also like looking at the sign, but also looking at the south node. I would say that's tied to the past lives and what you carry forward in this life. I don't know, take a look at it, experiment with it, and share with me what you find out. See if that really resonates with you. If you can even do some sort of channeling of your past lives, or at least when you're born, let's say you do inner child healing, when you are able to remember the moment you're born, great. How did it feel? Do you remember any egoic sort of tendency, attachment? Go deep into it if you can, if you want to. I haven't done that yet. So all I know is that there's a learning style. It's in the cusp of the third house. All the stuff I just mentioned today. Okay, so I think that's it. I went over 30 minutes. A little too long for some of you, but thank you for holding on. If you come this far, great, awesome. Again, if you have any comments, questions, or if you want to share your experiences with reading your own birth chart, whether or not you use asteroids, that's not the point. Let me know in the comments below. And that's it. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Thank you for watching. And that's it. Have a good day. See you later. Bye.